Epstein is just a national story that will not stop under any circumstance. And we have evidence that Epstein is working with Israel to get America to go into these wars, and that's not relevant? No. He's working with an intelligence officer, that's Mossad. He's working with the former head of Mossad. He's working with the former prime minister of Israel. He, by the way, in his house, just in case it wasn't clear, giant map of Israel right in the middle, right? But mainstream media goes, shh. It's Trump, it's definitely Trump. It's only Trump. Don't look at anyone else, just Trump. No. I don't know if it's Trump, but I do know it ain't just Trump.
Today, President Donald Trump's ties to Jeffrey Epstein are back in the spotlight thanks to thousands of pages of emails released by both Republicans and Democrats in Congress. Cenk, what are your 2 cents?
Oh boy, is the beginning of my 2 cents. So we're super damning emails, but I think that there are really interesting nuggets in here, like why were reporters looking to help Jeffrey Epstein? And whether Trump is involved or not, and there's a lot of evidence here, but I would say mainly in one direction, but there is one piece of counter evidence too that I want to make sure that you guys see. But whether he's involved or not, who organized this whole thing is the main question that I have. So let's give you all the details and then break down all the interesting parts that others might have missed.
Yeah, well, this morning, Democrats in the House Oversight Committee released a new batch of Epstein emails, and 3 of them are especially interesting. The first was an email that Epstein sent to Ghislaine Maxwell in 2011. I want you to realize that dog that hasn't barked is Trump. Victim spent hours at my house with him. He has never once been mentioned. Police chief, etc. I'm 75% there. In response, Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt stated the unnamed victim referenced in these emails is the late Virginia Giuffre, who repeatedly said President Trump was not involved in any wrongdoing whatsoever and couldn't have been friendlier to her in their limited interactions. Now, here is the second email which Epstein sent to journalist Michael Wolff in 2019. Trump said he asked me to resign, never a member ever. Of course, he knew about the girls as he asked Ghislaine to stop. Finally, here is an email exchange between Epstein and Wolff from 2015 when Trump was first running for president. Wolff, I hear CNN planning to ask Trump tonight about his relationship with you, either on air or in scrum afterwards. Epstein, if we were able to craft an answer for him, what do you think it should be? Wolff, I think you should let him hang himself. If he says he hasn't been on the plane or to the House, then that gives you a valuable PR and political currency. You can hang him in a way that potentially generates a positive benefit for you. Or if it really looks like he could win, you could save him, generating a debt. Now, Cenk, there are many more emails released by the Republicans later today, but what are your first thoughts on those 3 released by House Oversight Democrats?
I'm gonna give you one more interaction that Epstein had with a reporter to give you the context for what I'm gonna say about Michael Wolff. There's apparently a New York Times reporter, Landon Thomas Jr., who also tipped off Epstein in the emails saying, hey, someone is looking into finding out more about you and he might write a book and I'm giving you a heads up, etc. Why is a New York Times reporter coordinating with Jeffrey Epstein and giving him information to protect him? That is super weird. His name is, like I said, Landon Thomas Jr. He's no longer with the New York Times now, but that was pretty recent that happened. And then Michael Wolff, so-called intrepid journalist, going and strategizing with Epstein. Should we put a dagger in Trump's back or shouldn't we? How should we handle this? Who's we? Who the hell's we? What's going on here? This is super strange. And should we take out Trump now or should we use it as leverage against him later? Who the F is we? Why is Michael Wolff working with Epstein on this? And he's supposed to be like, oh, tough journalist, and he's been charged with not getting his facts right on attacks he's made against Donald Trump, etc. We stopped using him as a source because we thought he's unreliable. We're not going to quote a guy who's unreliable. And so that didn't have anything to do with politics. I'm against Trump, but he said things about Trump that didn't check out. I'm like, I'm done with him. And apparently we were right. So then Michael Wolff is asked about it today, and he gives an answer. And in his discussion about it, he keeps saying over and over again, now we see the real issue here, and the only question is, did Donald Trump know? Was he involved in this plot? Why are you telling me that's the only question? Isn't it weird? Like, so, okay, brother, you are working with Epstein to cover up Epstein's crimes, even though you're a journalist. And now you come out and you go, aha, you see how it's definitely not me. Forget Epstein, forget anyone else organizing this. It's Donald Trump, which makes me think, wait, I guess it's not Donald Trump. Okay, so now look, guys, whether it's Donald Trump, I don't know. And if you say, hey, Cenk, how could you not know? But look at all this damning stuff, right? No question, there's tons of damning stuff here. And could Trump have done it? I mean, how many times did Trump talk about how much he likes young girls? Super awkward, not just how he knows that Jeffrey Epstein likes young girls, but Trump would often comment to a very young girl, oh, you're gonna be hot when you grow up. And comments about his own daughter, etc. And did Trump know that Epstein was doing something with young girls that was not right? Oh, of course he knew. He literally said, there's a quote of him saying, and Jeffrey likes women as much as do, but he likes them on the younger side. You're saying it publicly, right? And here's a quote where Epstein said in the emails, the one that Jordan read to you a minute ago, of course he knew about the girls. That's Epstein saying, of course he knew about the girls. So wait, where's the part where I'm a little skeptical whether Trump did it? The very next thing, if you notice, was he said, of course he knew about the girls as he asked Ghislaine to stop. Why did Trump ask Ghislaine Maxwell to stop? That's a good question, right? And so, now, of course, Trump will say, and Trump's followers will say, oh, that's because he's the one guy who stood up to him. But when reporters asked Trump, he said, yeah, they were taking the girls from Mar-a-Lago. They were masseuses at Mar-a-Lago, I didn't like that. Oh, you idiot. Thank you for at least that confession, right? It would have been so easy to say, oh, I'm stopping the bad guy. But since he has verbal diarrhea, he just said what was actually in his mind, which is like, they were taking my young girls and moving them over to Epstein's, right? So, but to me, Jordan, like whether Trump did it is of course super relevant, I get it, right? But what's much more relevant is who the hell organized this giant scheme in the middle of America to molest and rape American girls on video and make sure that you have super wealthy, super powerful men on tape committing this awful crime. And other than Drop Site News and us and a couple other outlets, I mean, mainstream media is preposterous. They're pretending like, oh, what do you mean? It was just Epstein and Maxwell. It couldn't possibly be anyone else. I'll get to Drop Site News and their incredible revelations in a second. But what do you think about all that?
I don't have a reason to doubt Drop Site's reporting. Sure, I guess. I've long maintained when you talk about, or you or anybody, oh, Mossad's behind this. Yeah, could be. I'd want to see more reporting, more evidence. That's all. But I don't think it's worth it for me anyway. Speculating and then just running with it. So I'm not saying you're doing that, but I would like to see more reporting on that. Wouldn't surprise me at this point.
Yeah, so I'm gonna come back to Trump in a second. So I referenced it, Jordan just referenced this, let me just explain. Drop Site News has 4 articles about Epstein's connections to Mossad. So Epstein, turns out, was way more powerful than I even realized. And so he was Ehud Barak, the former head of intelligence for Israel, former defense minister for Israel, former prime minister for Israel. Not only did he come and visit with Epstein 30 times, he's all over the emails, they're constantly communicating. Not only that, there was a guy who is a current Israeli intelligence operative that was also working with them and would run errands for Ehud Barak, and he'd worked with Barak for a long time, and then also doing things with Epstein. And then Barak would go to Epstein to help him with different international relationships, including with Vladimir Putin. And Epstein would then organize those meetings. Okay, first, stop right there. That means he has more power than the former Israeli prime minister. And the Israeli prime ministers are pretty much the most powerful people on earth. He had more power than them? Jesus, okay? So then he organizes that deal, and what is it about? And you see it in the emails, not just these newly released emails, but the ones that Dropsite News got. And that's Ryan Grim, Jeremy Scahill, unimpeachable reporters, the best reporters in the country. And so it turns out that why they were trying to get in touch with Putin was because they wanted to topple Assad's regime. They wanted to say that he used chemical weapons, and they wanted it to be a red line, and they were insistent on red line, make sure everybody's talking about red line, so that if he crosses it, America has to go in and topple the Syrian government on behalf of Israel. And plus, they wanted America to attack Iran, yes, back then as well. And so Epstein is managing the relationships to make sure America does what Israel wants, which is war in Syria and Iran. Now, that is already like amazing news, unbelievable news, and corroborated in their own emails. But what's extra amazing is what Jordan alluded to there. Mainstream media hasn't covered it at all. How could you not cover that story? That's unconscionable. Are you reporters or are you not reporters? I mean, no one can say that's not a giant story. That's as big a story as I've ever heard. Epstein is just a national story that will not stop under any circumstance. And we have evidence that Epstein is working with Israel to get America to go into these wars, and that's not relevant? No. He's working with an intelligence officer, that's Mossad. He's working with the former head of Mossad. He's working with the former prime minister of Israel. He, by the way, in his house, just in case it wasn't clear, giant map of Israel right in the middle, right? But mainstream media goes, shh, it's Trump, it's definitely Trump, it's only Trump. Don't look at anyone else, just Trump. No, I don't know if it's Trump, but I do know it ain't just Trump. I mean, I saw a news article today, preposterous, where they wrote, well, it could be Trump, and obviously the people who organized this are just Epstein and Maxwell. I mean, there's Prince Andrew as well, but Prince Andrew's, that's the only other person that was involved. Nah, that's not news, that's propaganda. And so, what the F is going on here?
Why are White House officials then meeting with Representative Boebert in an effort to try and get her to not sign this petition calling for the release of the files?
Doesn't it show transparency that members of the Trump administration are willing to brief members of Congress whenever they please? Doesn't that show our level of transparency? Doesn't that show the level of transparency when we are willing to sit down with members of Congress and address their concerns?
Today, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt confirmed that the Trump administration met with Lauren Boebert, one of the few Republicans in Congress who wants the Epstein files released. Now, this is relevant considering that the House of Representatives can finally force a vote on the issue today. Now, Jank, we spent a lot of time this hour talking about it, but what do you make of this angle specifically?
So I think that this proves something pretty definitively, that it involves intelligence agencies. I'll explain why in a minute after Jordan gives you the whole story. But I also wanted to point out, she said, they met with her to address her concerns. Why? Did Lauren Boebert have concerns regarding the FBI and the Attorney General in regards to the Epstein vote? Why would she have those concerns? Did she ask for the meeting? And if she did, does she have national security concerns around Epstein? Because that would be a very interesting story. So none of this makes any sense, but we'll make sense of it for you.
Now, here's what you need to know. Today, Representative-elect Adelita Grijalva has finally been sworn into Congress. And with her support, the House of Representatives can force a vote on releasing the Epstein files. That effort has been led by Representatives Ro Khanna and Thomas Massie. They need 218 signatures on a discharge petition to force a vote on releasing the files. Grijalva was the 218th. All of the House Democrats are on board with forcing that vote. A few Republicans are as well. And here is that list excluding Massie, who we already mentioned. Lauren Boebert, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and Nancy Mace. Now, the Trump administration is trying to keep the files hidden. According to anonymous sources who spoke with the New York Times, yesterday, Trump spoke with Boebert on the phone. Today, Boebert was summoned to a meeting in the White House Situation Room with Attorney General Pam Bondi, FBI Director Kash Patel, and others. The Times sources stated that Trump has been trying to connect with Mace, but she has yet to pick up his calls. Meanwhile, Trump is crashing out on Truth Social once again. Writing here, the Democrats are trying to bring up the Jeffrey Epstein hoax again because they'll do anything at all to deflect on how badly they've done on the shutdown and so many other subjects. Only a very bad or stupid Republican would fall into that trap. The Democrats cost our country $1.5 trillion with their recent antics of viciously closing our country while at the same time putting many at risk. And they should pay a fair price. There should be no deflections to Epstein or anything else, and any Republican involved should be focused only on opening up our country and fixing the massive damage caused by the Democrats. In other words, he continued, the Democrats are using the Jeffrey Epstein hoax to try and deflect from their massive failures. In particular, their most recent one, the shutdown. Cenk, this is very bizarre. You're pulling a member of Congress who's on the other side of an issue into the Situation Room. Why not an Oval Office sit down? Why not meeting at the departments? Why not going to her office? It seems like there's a layer of sensitivity here that Caroline Leavitt accidentally disclosed.
No, they just gave away the game. It's definitely about national security. There's no other reason to be in the Situation Room. There's no other reason to have the Attorney General and the FBI Director there. This is a vote in Congress. It has nothing to do with them. So apparently, it is national security. So that means Epstein and Maxwell did not work alone. Period. Period. End of conversation. So now the logical next question is, so who did they work with? Now, we've already told you in other stories, and now backed up by Dropsite News' brilliant 4-part series, there is absolutely no question which country Epstein worked with. It was Israel. So that's not conjecture, it's not a conspiracy theory. He had Ehud Barak, the former prime minister, over 30 times. That was already public knowledge, everybody knew that. Ghislaine Maxwell's dad is Robert Maxwell, probably the most legendary Mossad spy of all time, stole America's nuclear secrets, gave it to Israel. But you say, okay, that's her dad. Okay, maybe the Israeli prime minister was just, visiting coincidentally, or maybe he was a pervert himself. All those things are possible. But now we know through Dropsite News, no. Epstein and Ehud Barak and Israeli spy, by the way, also current Israeli spy at the time, now deceased, all working together. And what were they working together on? Working on getting Putin to back out of Syria so that they could topple the Assad regime, which Israel was opposed to, and attacking Iran and pushing America into a war with Iran and with Syria. So it's not at all a mystery which government Epstein was working with. It's definitive now. You could go read it for yourself. We have Epstein's emails, we have Ehud Barak's emails. So there's no lack of clarity. Epstein was working with Israel, and now if you're gonna vote on this, they're gonna pull you into the Situation Room and lecture you on how you're not allowed to vote to tell the American people what actually happened and how a special ally might not be an ally at all. Okay, so now, I'm so frustrated by this. I assume they speak in coded language. I don't know, I'm not in the Situation Room. But do they literally tell Boebert, that's it, you work for Israel and shut up and do as you're told? Or do they use interesting coded language? Will Boebert ever tell us what they actually said, right? But now it doesn't matter, it's moot. Why is it moot? Not just because Grijalva was sworn in, but Jordan, there's a chance that these guys are mega dumb. I don't mean the Israelis, they're the people that worked on this. It's not all Israelis, but whoever worked on this in Israeli intelligence was brilliant and kept it hidden with the convenient help of almost all of mainstream media, and almost every American politician kept it hidden for decades. No, I'm talking about Trump and his cronies. There's some chance the dumbasses didn't know if the House passes it, that doesn't really mean anything. It has to go to the Senate, and you have a squadron of corrupt senators who would love to serve Israel and block this. So that's another bite at the apple, but even then it doesn't matter, because if you get past the Senate, the president has to sign off on it. And of course he's gonna veto it, because he's all over the Epstein files, and he's desperately trying to prevent Epstein files being released. So what are they panicking about, right? So they pull in these guys, oh, don't vote on it. And so why do I say that there might be idiots and not realize that? Because guys, what happened after Grijalva got seated, and apparently the beseechment of Nancy Mason Boebert didn't work, is all of a sudden now Republicans are coming out right after that and going, oh yeah, I was gonna vote to release it too. Of course you were, of course you were. So now Warren Davidson, Eli Crane, and Don Bacon have now come out, now that it's clear that they're gonna lose the vote. Yeah, I meant release it. Of course, I don't work for Israel. I mean, all that AIPAC money and stuff. No, I don't work for Epstein. I'm not trying to cover up for Epstein and all of his crimes and raping American children. No. I meant release it. We lost the vote, right? For sure, Israel's not gonna punish me. Okay, yeah, we lost the vote. Okay, yeah, I meant to release it. There's some chance they didn't know that it has, you idiots. It has to go to the Senate and the president. You didn't know that? Anyways, okay, Jordan, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm kind of enamored with these people trying to save face at the last minute. Like, no, we saw where you were. We saw people try to deflect, cover for Trump. You had months to do this. They all wanted to run on it. They all wanted to work people up into a frenzy, thinking the only person who would be implicated would be Bill Clinton or I guess a couple people, Bill Gates and a few other people that could, project as Democrats. But now that it's implicating their guys, suddenly it's much more complicated. Let's not rush to anything. So what's interesting here is some of the people involved, of course, but also how, again, they've showed their hand accidentally. And beyond the Epstein stuff, we've spent a lot of time this hour talking about it. To me, it underscores just how inept this administration is. Because Caroline Leavitt I don't think she meant to reveal where that meeting took place. But in doing so, she told us so much more than they actually want out there. They could have just said in the White House. They could have said whatever. They had a meeting. It didn't have to be where specifically it was held. And we might even see them try to walk that back tomorrow as more and more people start to connect the dots. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see that. But this is a team of dunces that Trump has put together, all because they're loyal to him and they are in service of him. We've talked about it a lot, of course, but just Pam Bondi being in that meeting, yes, part of it is because it's probably a national security issue, probably an intelligence community issue, but also her job is just protecting Trump. He's totally politicized the FBI. That's a bad thing. We see it across the board, but it's like a secondary thing in this story because this main topic is so awful, so heinous, and so large. But also, again, it's another reminder that he has weaponized these departments.
Yeah. I'm gonna leave you with the last irony here, which is that Caroline Leavitt described trying to desperately block the release of the Epstein files as their efforts at transparency. We're now fully in 1984 Orwellian state, where everyone in government agrees that lies are truth and truth are lies.
An Israeli military intelligence officer happened to stay at Jeffrey Epstein's Manhattan apartment on at least 3 separate occasions, and that's according to a new report from Dropsite News. Now, Epstein may have even wired money to him, once again raising questions about Epstein's alleged ties to Israeli intelligence networks. Alleged. Now, DropSite compiled some of the evidence for this story from former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak's hacked emails. So we have that, super interesting. In addition to Epstein's personal schedules, which were in fact released by the House Oversight Committee just last month. Now, the intelligence officer that we're referring to here, that was reported by the DropSite news story, is a man by the name of Yoni Koren. Yoni Koren, Israeli military intelligence officer who stayed at Epstein's Manhattan apartment on at least 3 separate occasions. And here's what we know about him. He started his career in the research division of the IDF's military intelligence directorate, which is called Amman. And he eventually rose through the ranks to become a senior officer. Now, in 1985, Koren worked on a covert campaign with Mossad to help Syrian intelligence kidnap PLO operatives traveling from Cyprus to Lebanon. And he also worked very closely with Israel's former Prime Minister Ehud Barak. He did so for years while serving as his chief of staff. While serving as the chief of staff for the IDF, managing his schedules and his operations. Now, Barak's friendship with Epstein has been well documented. We actually have images of him entering Epstein's apartment. So we've known about that already, but he did, so that's well documented. He met with Epstein dozens of times. He flew on Epstein's jet and once visited the infamous Epstein Island. We're talking about Ehud Barak here. Now, one of the times Koren stayed at Epstein's place was while he was working as a senior aide to Ehud Barak. Now, after Barak left the IDF, Koren headed his staff as interior minister, then foreign minister, and then after that, defense minister. And the details here are super interesting. After Barak's retirement, Koren was a covert fixer in Washington who enjoyed special access to senior national security figures, I'm sure he did, including Leon Panetta and his senior advisor, Jeremy Bash. As soon as Barak left the Israeli government, Koren became a key go-between for Barak and the American and Israeli intelligence communities. So let's get to the email records and what they show, because apparently they show that Barak was using Koren as an intermediary to exchange information with Amman. Koren was also active in Epstein and Barak's efforts to source cybersecurity startups from the technology research units of Amman, demonstrating how enmeshed in Israeli spy networks he remained. So now let's get to some details about his stays at Epstein's Manhattan apartment. By the way, are you guys seeing the intertwined nature of Mossad and the CIA and the fact that they had a relationship with Epstein in the first place? So that child trafficking that took place wasn't part of a blackmail operation. Are we stupid? I'm sorry. I don't believe anyone who tries to pour cold water on the fact that Epstein was running a blackmail operation. It's so obvious. I mean, how else do you explain the unwavering commitment to Israel, regardless of who's in charge in that country, regardless of the political makeup of the Knesset, regardless of what type of atrocities Israel is carrying out, regardless of how much money it costs the American taxpayers and how much it destroys the economic health of this country to keep up with this charade? No, there are American politicians and elites in the US, powerful, influential people who might be pedophiles and do Israel's bidding because they don't want that information to come out. Like, it's just so obvious, guys. It's so obvious. But anyway, let's talk about Koren's stays at Epstein's apartment. So Koren was also active, so let's talk about the first day. The first day at Epstein's Manhattan apartment was back in February of 2013. So this is when he was working as Ehud Barak's senior aide. Now the following year, according to Epstein's personal calendars released by the House, Koren stayed at Epstein's spare apartment again for the first 2 weeks of October 2014. The calendar released by the House committee reads, reminder, Yoni in apartment, September 30 through October 13th. And then in the weeks preceding his stay at Epstein's apartment, Corin maintained contact with spies in Amman, despite his supposed status as a private citizen. And then there was his third stay that we know of. There might be more, but in terms of the reporting we're seeing from Drop Site News, they were able to identify 3 separate occasions. Let's talk about the third one. His third stay at Epstein's apartment was for 10 days in September. That's a long time. It's a long time hanging out with a freaking child sex trafficker and pedophile, but that's what this guy was up to. Epstein's assistant, Leslie, wrote an email to Corin, essentially informing him that she had reserved an apartment for him for 10 days. And then Corin responded, that's what you're looking at here, with thanks a lot, send my regards and thanks to Jeffrey. Obviously he's referring to Jeffrey Epstein there. Now, during all 3 of his stays in Epstein's Manhattan apartment, Corin appeared to be conducting official or unofficial business on behalf of Ehud Barak. So let's talk a little bit about Ehud Barak. Because in February of 2015, a few months before Corin's third visit to Epstein's Manhattan apartment, leaked emails show that Ehud Barak was actually sending Epstein bank details for funds that were to be wired to Corin's Citibank account. We have the evidence right here. Let's take a quick look at that. There it is, that's the email. Obviously the account numbers and all that have been redacted, but it's from Ehud Barak to Jeffrey Epstein. Hi Jeff, that's the info. Then you have the account number. Dropsite could not determine the purpose of the wire transfer or confirm whether or not the funds were successfully sent to Corin. All we know right now is that a former prime minister of Israel got into contact with Jeffrey Epstein to provide bank account details of an Israeli spy so Epstein can wire money to this individual. Okay. But the bank transfer information was followed by an unusually cryptic communication between Barak and Corin regarding handoff of a physical bank card. The two had a pretty good reason to communicate in coded language because documents leaked by Edward Snowden just over a year prior revealed that the 2 men were major counterintelligence targets for the United States, and the NSA had been snooping on their messages. Did they know, I mean, did our intelligence community know that they were spying on an Israeli? Like, you don't do that. They get to do whatever they want, including here on US soil, with a disgusting, disgraced child sex trafficker and pedophile. So this is Dropsite's 4th installment in its series about Jeffrey Epstein and his ties to Israel. So far, they've exposed quite a bit, including Epstein's role in brokering a security agreement between Israel and Mongolia. They've also identified Epstein's effort to set up a back channel between Israel and Russia during the Syrian civil war. And they also showed Epstein's role as a key facilitator of a security agreement between Israel and the West African nation, and a West African nation that I'm not gonna try to pronounce because I'm gonna mispronounce it. And their reporting throws a wrench in the government's official line that Epstein had no foreign or domestic intelligence ties, obviously. Like, who would believe our government on this issue in particular? I wouldn't. I wouldn't at all. They're either being blackmailed or bribed, and they're not telling us the truth. Our media launders Israel's reputation. Our media lies to the American people about what Israel is actually up to. Why would we believe for a second that our government, which has been in bed with the Israelis, would ever tell us the truth about a guy who was very likely running a blackmail operation and his ties to the Israelis? Because guess what, that wouldn't be a good look, right? It wouldn't be a good look for Israel, and certainly it wouldn't be a good look for the United States either, since we're obviously involved in this. If literal minors were being trafficked with the main purpose of getting blackmail on powerful people. whether it's in this country or any other country. You're literally exploiting children, minors, to be raped so foreign governments can have dirt on powerful people? Okay. Meanwhile, Mike Johnson said the Republicans are doing everything they can to prevent the Epstein files from being exposed. So he didn't say that he's doing that, but Mike Johnson's behavior has made it clear that he and the Republicans are doing everything they can to prevent like real transparency about the Epstein files. He's refused to swear in Democratic Congresswoman elect Adelina Grijalva, who would serve as the final member needed to force a vote on the release of the Epstein files. And in Marjorie Taylor Greene's recent conversation with Megyn Kelly, she wondered whether the Epstein issue was the real reason Mike Johnson refused to convene the House during the shutdown, the government shutdown. Take a look at that.
Everyone, for how many years now, all of us have been calling to release the Epstein files. And Thomas Massey entered a resolution to release, and I'm a co-sponsor. I want to release the Epstein files, and it's been blocked over and over, unfortunately. I tell you what, I've started to question, is this why we're not in session?
Really?
Yeah.
I think it's fair to have that suspicion. I know that I've certainly had that suspicion. And today, Mike Johnson, again, House Speaker, called the House back into session. So we'll see if he immediately swears in Grijalva as promised, or if he continues to block a vote on the Epstein files. I'd bet on the latter, but who knows, he might prove me wrong. I hope he does. Israel's involvement with Epstein is disgusting. And the fact that our government is trying to cover this all up is even more disgusting.
Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.